Okay, so again, I want to welcome everyone to our annual teleconference on the Graduate Student Research Award on behalf of the APA's Division 38 Health Psychology Research Council. Again, I ask that you stay muted unless you have questions. You've given us permission to be recorded by being on this call. That will be shared on our website. And let's get right into it. I have with us today, I'm Dr. Amanda Allman. I'm Associate Professor of Psychology at the City University of New York, the New York City College of Technology. I also serve as Vice Chair to the Division 38's Health Research Council. So I welcome you. Thank you for having us. Today we also have with us two past winners. So first is Jessie Guler. She's a fifth-year doctoral candidate at the University of Kansas in the Clinical Child Psychology program. Her research focuses on examining the ways in which war, terrorism, and violence are related to neurocognitive processes, as well as health and resilience among refugees and immigrants after migration. She was awarded the Society for Health Psychology funding for her proposed dissertation project, which looks at the health and the resilience of Arab, Somali, and Burmese resettled refugee parent-child dyads who are exposed to trauma. So thank you for joining us, Jessie. We also have with us today past winner Roberto Renteria. He's a fifth-year doctoral candidate in the counseling psychology program at Arizona State University. His research focuses primarily on mental and physical health on Latinx communities with an emphasis in sexual and gender minority individuals. Roberto applies intersectional theory to examine how overlapping forms of oppression and discrimination are linked to health disparities and health outcomes. His dissertation explores the links between intersecting discrimination, psychological distress, and physical health symptoms, again, among Latinx sexual minority adults. So thank you so much for joining us here today. I want to start by going over the application process, and then we'll hear a bit from our panelists and their experience with the application process. So this is a Graduate Student Research Award in which there are 6 awards granted every year, and each award is for the amount of $2,000. 4 of the awards are given to projects that cover any topic in health psychology. And we have 2 additional awards. One of the awards is to promote inclusion in terms of the inclusion of scientists from underrepresented groups. So this is to increase the number of scientists from those groups in our research relevant to health psychology. And I'll share the link with you in a few moments. I'll put in the chat the link to the application, but we have a very thorough definition of what we mean in terms of underrepresented. This can be in terms of racial and ethnic groups, as well as ability, location, rural areas, pretty extensive. We followed the NIH and NSF guidelines in terms of describing that. So as a member of the council, that's an award we work to get and we're very pleased to offer. And then the 6th award is the one for addressing health disparities. So research on the differences in terms of incidence, prevalence, mortality, or morbidity of diseases and health outcomes among specific population groups. And for those of us joining again, I ask that you keep your line muted. Thank you. Okay, so the proposal must be received by January 15th. Who's eligible? So any full-time student enrolled in any degree conferring graduate program in psychology. So you heard that our past winners, one is in clinical child psychology, the other is in counseling psychology. So you do not have to be in a health psychology program. It can be any degree conferring graduate program in psychology, kind of at large. Students must be current members of the Society for Health Psychology. That's Division 38. And I'll add that you do not have to be a member of APA to be a member of Division 38. And I have this link here for you, but allow me to put it in the chat. So give me a moment. I want to put the application in the chat. And I also want to put information about joining the division in the chat. So thank you for bearing with me. All right, so it looks like everyone has been able to view that. Let me go back to my screen here. So again, it's important that you, by the time you apply, you've become a member of Division 38, and that deadline again is July 15th, so just a couple months away. The research grant has a number of different sections, and I think it's always helpful to get an idea about how long the application should be, as well as each section. So your specific aims include your research goals and your hypotheses. That should be about a page. The background information, this is where you would provide a review of the literature, findings from previous research, ultimately leading to the gap that exists in literature and the way in which your research will address that. So that background information is going to be a bit longer and take about 2 pages. So we have specific aims and backgrounds as the first 2 components. Oh, yes, the deadline is January 15th. I hope I've made that clear. Sorry if I've misspoke on that. All right, so going on with the components of the research application, the research plan, which is part of your application, is the methods section. One of the questions that was asked in advance was, let's see, relatedly, what do recommended applicants, what should they emphasize in their research proposal? And I've been reviewing these grant applications for a number of years now, and the methods section is also very important for the review process. So be specific. And again, we suggest around 3 pages because this is a lot of information in terms of how you plan on executing the research. So general bullet points here for methods, inclusion, exclusion criteria, your sample and recruitment, your measurement, procedures, analysis, and any anticipated limitations. Something else I'll point out is, win or lose, you receive the feedback of your reviewers for this. And I know that the reviewers put a lot of time in that, so you'll definitely get a lot of feedback as another reason to apply. Not that you didn't have enough good reasons in the first place, but another reason to apply is to receive this feedback from experts in the discipline of health psychology. We also try to match the grant application with the folks on council who might have similar topics that they study. So the feedback you get is really, really great. And a lot of it will be on the topic of methods, as well as the other components of the research plan and the application. Be sure to have your references, and these should be formatted according to APA. And I think it's official. I think we've all finally transitioned to the 7th edition of APA. I know last year, even journals were accepting 6th or 7th. I think it's safe to say, as we all know by now, go ahead and use that 7th edition formatting, which isn't too different from the 6th. And then general formatting information, 12 size font and 1-inch margins must be used. Always looking for consistency, especially in a peer review process such as ours. Other parts of the application, I'm going to jump down to budget because that's something that you have control over and you put together yourself. So give us an example of your budget. Questions that have come up in the previous teleconference is, what if my budget is beyond the $2,000 of the award? And that's encouraged and to be expected in many cases. So give us the entire budget and show us in that budget how the $2,000 from this award would be used in addition to other sources. Maybe perhaps you're applying elsewhere, perhaps there's funding within your institution, but give us the whole budget. The other piece are those, the cover letter. Tell us about your, be sure to confirm, that you're a member of the Society for Health Psychology and how your research addresses the topic. So in your cover letter, again, assure us that you're a member. We can always search your name up in terms of membership. So we want to have that evidence there. But we also want you to articulate how your research is a good match for health psychology. It's the letter of recommendation was the point I was going to get to. That's beyond your control. So start early, get those letters of recommendation from your faculty sponsor. We want to verify that the research you're doing is your project and that you as the student will be serving as the principal investigator for this research. So that's something, and perhaps our panelists will talk about maybe that today if that was something they found useful. I think it's always good to get that letter of recommendation, or at least that request for it out sooner rather than later. And then the biographical sketch following the NIH BioSketch guidelines for pre-doctoral fellowships. And I don't have the link readily available to share with that, which is at this point an afterthought, so forgive me, but you can quickly and easily find the guidelines for the NIH BioSketch for pre-doctoral fellowships. And in my experience, that's a BioSketch that you kind of, moving forward, you would like to have that prepared anyways, and something you'll continue to update. So be sure to have that component as part of your application. Okay, so about the review process, and at the end of the slide, I'll even show you the rating forms that each reviewer uses in addition to their feedback. But each application is sent to 2 independent reviewers with all of your information. It's not included in that review, so it is de-identified, and we do our best to match reviewers to the topic areas. So we try to find experts in that particular topic to the best of our ability and whenever that is possible. So it's, again, important to remember that sometimes the reviewers might not be specific experts in your topic, but they have, so keep that in mind. So be sure to make sure that anyone could easily digest the information in your application. And I'll add that even though they may not be experts in your specific topic area, these are folks with very strong research skills. So again, that method section is something you can get plenty of feedback on, and it's something you're going to want to really detail as well. So finally, wrapping my piece up, this is what we are looking at in terms of the Student Research Award in terms of rating. The information about student initials. So again, your name's removed, folks just see your initials. That's so we can track folks. If you are eligible for a number of the different awards, that will be indicated. And then the quality of the application is evaluated. And you can see here, this is in terms of theory and rationale, methodological adequacy, the comprehensibility and clarity of writing, the innovation. And again, that's in that background piece. Be sure to point out the gap in literature and the ways in which your research will be addressing that. The significance and contribution of health psychology literature, that's something you would include in the literature review portion, and the strength of the applicant, and this is also largely based on your letter of recommendation, as well as your cover letter. You'll be given an overall rating, and we use that overall rating to move people on to the kind of the final round and to select our winner. So the final decision is based on that overall rating. And again, ample feedback on both the strengths and the weaknesses. So you have a question, can you select multiple categories if they do fit into more than one category? Absolutely. So when we have our finalists in terms of number, it would be for the general. And if you're not making it in the general, but you qualify for health disparities, you'd be in the top of the health disparities. So you are eligible across all different categories. You can only win one, so to speak. So select multiple categories if they do fit. So a person who's applying, who's eligible for the inclusion as well as the health disparities award would be considered for the general award if they had a score that was above and beyond, say, everybody else as well. So something to consider. You can definitely select multiple categories. Great question. All right, so that is it for me. I think it's time to hear from our panelists. So first I would ask Jessie Guler to give us a little bit of information on her experience as an applicant and past winner. Jessie.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to talk a little bit about my experiences applying for a grant through the division. First, I guess caveat being like, I just really encourage other people to go through the process of working on writing grants for your research. I definitely feel like for me, it's been such a great learning opportunity that definitely is not the same as writing a paper or presenting at a conference. It's a very unique thing. And I definitely feel like it's really taught me a lot about research and how to even kind of conceptualize my own interests better to present to other people. So I was thinking through a little bit before our talk today of just like, what were my greatest takeaways working on this grant application? And I thought through a couple. First, I guess it's probably relevant to say, so last year I applied and my research is focused on refugees, resettled refugees living in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was awarded the Health Disparities Award last year. And I think for me, I'm one of those students who have applied for a lot of things and have had successes and not so successes and rejections over the years trying to fund my project. And so I think one thing that is always like my first part of looking up awards and something that really attracted me to the grants through our division is just doing my own research, doing my own homework, and reading a lot about the grant mechanisms, and really thinking about fit. And where my project fit, and if I felt like the aims of my project really mapped up onto the aims of the grant mechanisms. And when I came across the grants through the division, I really felt like there was a really good fit for me. But I definitely think that that's definitely the first part, is just really reading that description page of the award many, many times and kind of dissecting it and trying to really parse apart what are the key aims of the grant and like what are folks trying to fund, and thinking through if my project matches that. And if I do feel like that, the next step really comes into selling that it really does fill that match. And so I think really thinking through that and even looking at previous award winners and topics they studied, I think that's always been really helpful to me before I even get to the part of writing. And then if it's a green light, then I kind of keep trucking and proceed. I think with writing the award, the biggest thing I think is just being really thoughtful of your audience and who you're writing for. And I know for me, again, I think, if I've already checked that box off in my head that like, I think my project is a good fit, I think it goes into the next challenge of like, okay, how do I convey that really well? And in a very succinct and concise way so other people can see that too. So I think I try personally to try to be really careful with like my language. Like I read the grant description on the website and I try to mirror the kind of language and scope in my own award application to try to really sell that fit. Again, knowing that my project was already set up that way, but really trying to convey it with my own language, I think is something I really thought a lot about when I was writing this application. So definitely making sure I'm looking into literature and doing a really comprehensive systematic review of things, but also being really conscientious in that way. And then the only other points I feel like I always try to spend a lot of time on my aims page. Obviously, all the parts are really important, but I think that aims page for me has always been a really like home base for me. Like I feel like once I feel like that's really solid, everything else starts to really kind of fall into place. And also just to speak to the fact, I think this award is kind of cool and unique with the requiring the bio sketch with like the NIH format. And I actually am a student who has applied for an F31 through the NIH. And so I think it was a really good experience working on taking a CV and making it into a bio sketch. So that's an added unique thing about this award that I think is really valuable. And then my last probably points would be just making sure to really acknowledge that budget justification. My project is really expensive because of interpreters with refugees. So definitely my budget was larger than the award, but I was able to kind of have multiple columns that were really clear of like, this is the money I have, this is exactly how I'd use the money from the division, and this is what's left over. And, this is how I plan to continue to apply for more funding in that way. And then just embracing the feedback, because the feedback is so helpful. Win or lose, it's really helpful to read what people are thinking about your project. And I know for me, sometimes getting a rejection with feedback is actually sometimes even more helpful, because you can really learn how to make your application stronger the next time and reapply. But of course, always the feedback is such a great process. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Jesse. A lot of really good information, especially considering how, keeping in mind we're not the only grant out there. So I'm glad that you spoke to the idea of shopping around and really finding the match. And I think your tip to go ahead when you look at the proposal, when you go to where the proposal is located, I posted that in the chat. You can also see the previous winners, which was like great tip there. Thank you so much, Jesse. So let's hand it over to our second winner, our additional past winner, Roberto. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, I think I want to echo a lot of what Jesse said. Just honored to be a part of this and to have gotten this opportunity. And I think I resonated with a lot of the things that Jesse was saying. So I really appreciated kind of learning about your process. Um, so I don't want to be too repetitive. I did do a lot of the kind of similar things that Jesse kind of mentioned as far as like going back and really kind of learning about this specific grant. I think I don't know where most of you who are thinking of applying, if you're applying now, or if you're applying later, but I try to be very preemptive about giving myself time and finding ways and strategies to give myself time to dedicate to this. And so I knew that, I was coming up to like my dissertation sort of grant season where a bunch of grants are kind of due. So I actually worked, I don't have a lot of protected research time in my program specifically, and it just depends on where you're at if you do or not. So I don't get paid for any of this, and I needed to do this, and I wanted to do this. So I think if you can find a way to strategize either with your advisor or with your program to really give yourself the time, because this is, I think the attitude that I took to this is I'm applying for money, so I'm applying for basically like a job sort of thing, and I really need to put the time into it, right? Because it'll give me experience and potentially give me funding. So actually, I worked with my advisor to try and create a like independent seminar in the fall semester that covered some of my like course requirements for my program, and it was focused on like writing a NIH formatted proposal. So I was able to do that, and that helped me kind of give myself some time. I picked some like instructors for the course that I could like work with to kind of like make my writing better, and so I was able to kind of have a little more of that focus. And similar to what Jesse was saying, I had a whole list of grants and applications that I was just like, go, 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 go. Like, when is this one due? Okay, try to get this one done. A lot of them I got rejected for. This one stuck, so it was great. I was like power and numbers, right? So it was a probability thing. And so for this one specifically, I think kind of Jesse mentioned it, go back and see like what the winners were. That was very helpful for me. So I'm coming from a counseling psychology program, and there isn't a heavy health psych focus in my program. That's been something that I had to I've been seeking out and like kind of getting that training for myself. So I wanted to kind of see, is my sort of research valued and focused, particularly looking at intersectionality. Honestly, having the award on promoting inclusion and the health disparity kind of showed me, okay, structurally, yes, like they're valuing this. So to me, that really attracted me to this specific grant and grant opportunities. One thing that I did is actually looked at the Health Psychology Journal and see how they wrote about my topics, and so like what terminology that they use, what sort of methods have been used to see, okay, are my methods kind of like in line with what's been being published and how things are being discussed right now? And that was helpful just to kind of get an idea, also just on the field itself, and then how can I sort of connect my stuff to that. So I think that was really helpful. I'm blanking and I'll continue thinking about things as we go, but I think the last piece that to me was very valuable, and I think that an integral piece of my development with grant writing and being a researcher has been just my own identity as a writer. I imagine maybe a lot of you experience this, but I think there's always a lot of anxiety as far as like, do I apply? Do I not apply? Am I good enough? Is my project good enough? And so I did a lot of work just internally and with my mentor of like, okay, what is my expectation and how am I going to go about either rejection or not rejection? And how am I going to process that, right? And I think, Jesse, you were really saying how it was really valuable just to think like this was an experience of growth, no matter if I got it or not. And I think I was kind of going back to that central piece of like, this is work that I'm passionate about. This is work that I want to do. And I'm going to do this no matter what. I'm going to figure out how to get this done. And so I think that helped me to really kind of go through and get through the writing process and be iterative in that and not feel bad about, do I have to fit this sort of standard of maybe what do they want to hear? But instead it was like, no, this is what I believe to be the science that is needed right now for my community. This is what I need to do to, answer these sort of questions. And this is what I want to move in my career towards. So I think part of that, just kind of refers to more of that, my own internal process if you know that you need specific supports to help you through this, like start setting those pieces now. Like connect with mentors, with colleagues, with anyone. I think it's a tough process, right? Writing any sort of grant application and just the research writing process. So basically, I think the last piece for me is find ways to take care of yourself through it because it's tough. Either writing it or receiving the notice, either way. So I really want to emphasize that piece as well.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you both. There's a reason why you're winners, right? Not just for this award, but I'd like to think you're winners in the grand scheme of things, because that was excellent feedback that I think everyone can benefit from in terms of the grant application, not only graduate students for this award, but what incredibly thoughtful feedback you provided, both of you, especially this idea that the emphasis on the aims and the matching and the ample work that you did to really do that. And then Roberto, I really loved your response of kind of having a plan on how to process that and take care of yourself along the way, because regardless of the outcome, that the experience can be incredibly useful. And both of you articulated that really beautifully. Thank you both so very much. We have some pre-submitted questions, and then I want to give folks the chance to answer questions that you may have in the audience today. But the first two I can go ahead and answer because they are specific to the award and application process. So we had somebody ask, on average, how many applications are received for the general award and the Promote Inclusion Award. So the entire pool of applicants really varies year to year. And I want to say in my previous years, I've been on the council, goodness, five or more years. And I think as an entire pool, it's anywhere between 20 or 30 applicants, usually above 20. And I can't recall if there was anything greater than 30. And our chair of the council joined our call. I'm not going to put her on the spot. Maybe she can send me a chat if I have that number wrong, but between 20 and 30. And in terms for the Promote Inclusion Award, so we are now in our third year of offering that award. And I had jotted down the size of that award. That particular pool is always increasing. So it's getting close to half. So it was 35% year one, 45% the following year. And the same goes for the Health Disparities Award. That's right around 50%. This year, this most recent year was 55%. So those particular award pools are growing. Okay, great. So I just heard from our chair that it has been over 40, but it really does fluctuate. I can imagine in light of the pandemic and the virus and how this is a health psychology is it a dream or is it a nightmare? Because from a research perspective, it's finally like everyone gets health psychology, right? I used to articulate what health psychology was, and now it's very clear to us the relationship between health behaviors and mental health and the presence of disease. But I don't know if that would increase our pool this year. I could imagine that it could, because the current conditions could be very generative in terms of research ideas, but it also could be very limiting in the sense that how well are we all taking care of ourselves? So all this to say is that the research pool really fluctuates. But again, the awards to promote inclusion, as well as the health disparity awards, that's definitely growing, especially as our awards become more well-known. And as a research council, we've been going every year. We really work on how do we get this information out to as many people as possible, thinking about the multiple tiers of university and institutions that this can reach, as well as HBCU colleges, working with our graduate student advocates that are on different campuses for the division and having them reach out to folks. So we're really trying to get the awards out there and well known. The other question we had that I can also speak to would be, do we encourage scale construction and initial validation studies? We would certainly welcome that. And I think Jesse speaks to this idea about articulating your aim, and Roberto spoke to this as well, in finding out how it matches to the aims of the division and the topic of health psychology. I like the idea of looking through health psychology literature and seeing the work that they've done as a way to kind of guide you. So I'm a health psychologist who's done research, and I've published, scale construction and initial validation studies as well. So there's certainly, that's a welcome application. We had some questions for our panelists, both of which I think they spoke to, but the elements of the application that help them stand out and what do our panelists recommend applicants emphasize? And I think they both spoke to that, but Jesse or Roberto, do you have any additional comments in terms of what applicants can emphasize, or where you try to really make your application pop, if you have anything else to say about that? No. Oh, go ahead.
I think just to kind of really reiterate what Jesse was saying as far as the aims go, I agree. Like, I think that part was probably the one I spent the most like proofreading over and over and over and over again, just to like make it concise and frankly just to anchor myself. I think that was the one where if I would go back and be like, wait, this doesn't really make sense, what am I doing? I would just go back and really kind of reiterate what is it I'm trying to get to. And that really helped build a skeleton for the rest of it. Because I would always go back and be like, wait, am I covering this piece or not? And that would help me kind of reiterate back and forth like what I needed to do. So so I think connect to the aim specifically is what is it that what's the point, right? Like, what are you trying to do and why is that relevant? And I think that if you can really convey that, and I think a recommendation always, is like, can you send, it's just really one page and I have bullet points for that section. It's very just clear, direct. And if you can send it to someone who maybe is not in your field and they can understand why your work is important, like that's a great start, right? So maybe something like that might be really helpful to try out as well.
Yeah, I would second that. I definitely think the aims page, all the components are important, but the aims page, I agree. And sometimes I think when you are reading over and over again, you just start to like read it the same way. Yeah. And I know one thing I do sometimes is I use the feature on Microsoft Word where it'll actually read it out loud to you. And sometimes towards the end of my grant writing, I'll have it read the whole thing out loud to me. And sometimes I catch things that I wouldn't catch just by reading because I've read it so many times. But when I actually hear it, I hear something where I'm like, oh, I think I actually missed one like connection point there with that argument, and I can go back and fill it in.
Great. Thank you so much. And I really like the idea that the aims is an anchor. So, strong aims, that's really going to help you complete the other components, because you can come back to that and make everything clear as possible. All right. So if we have any questions from the audience, this is the time. Again, this is being recorded. So if you rather not have your voice recorded, I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions. If you'd like to speak, you may unmute or raise your hand, however you see fit. But any questions from attendees? All right, we'll give it another moment. I'll add that in the chat, I also included a link to the BioSketch information in the format for that. So that's available to you. So in the chat, you'll see a couple of things, the link to the actual proposal and information about how to make sure that you are a Division 38 member, because again, you must be a member in order to be eligible for the award. But remember, to be a member of Division 38, you do not need to be a member of APA. You can be a member of specifically the Society for Health Psychology. So I have a question, is the rating and scoring page available somewhere online? It is not available online. I had presented it here in the PowerPoint slide. Perhaps I can talk to the council and think about putting that online. I'm not sure if that's a council discussion we'd have in terms of a decision of making that information public. Of course, we like transparency, but it's not available online. It was just presented here today. So it really just speaks to, if you looking at the rating, it really just speaks to the different sections. If you see the different sections of the application, that's what each one of those is being evaluated on a scale, and then it's an overall rating, and that overall rating is what's used in terms of determining the winner. What are the most common mistakes made in submissions? I can speak to my own experience. So making sure you're a Division 38 member, that's major. And again, it takes a little bit of time. Once you become a member, we have to confirm that. So be sure you do that sooner rather than later. Other common mistakes is not making it crystal clear that you are the primary investigator. So having that letter of recommendation from your mentor or your research advisor articulating that this is this is your baby, that this belongs to you. So if there's any concern about that, that's going to definitely be a mistake in terms of submission. And you want everything to be together as one PDF. So once you get all of that material together, having it as one file, that's a common mistake. Sometimes you get the letters separate. And that's a relatively easily mistake for us to correct when, when I'm sending it out to reviewers. I might have to go back and find it. But again, another mistake is not getting all of that information into one PDF file. Are the slides available or on the website or via email? We can certainly, I think that makes sense. We can certainly send you the slides via email. You've all registered in advance, so we have your email address. So sure, we can send the slides out via email. Great question, Jennifer. Okay. Any other questions from the attendees today? Oh, great news. So everyone who joins now in November or December will be members throughout the entire year of 2021. So you can get an extra couple months in there, eligible for all our awards. And there's more benefits than just the awards. You also get a number, access to our teleconferences, such as this one, which is being recorded, but also timely topic specific teleconferences that our council, as well as the entire society, make available as well. So join soon. Yes, thank you to our presenters. I think this was an outstanding job. You guys took a lot of thought and gave some really excellent feedback. So I want to thank you on behalf of Allie, who is our Research Council Chair, myself, Barbara Keaton, who works at large with the Society of Health Psychology. We all thank our presenters and our attendees very, very much. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure.